Have you ever done this? You pick up one translation of the Bhagavad Gita, start reading, and then you grab another one, and it feels like a totally different book. If you have, you are definitely not alone. See, this ancient text isn't just a book. It's more like a conversation that's been going on for centuries. And today, we're going to figure out why it speaks in so many different voices.
This is the big question, isn't it? It's the puzzle that has stumped readers for generations. Is one version the right one and all the others are just wrong? Or is there something way more interesting, something much more profound, going on inside the text itself?
So here's our game plan. Think of us as detectives. We're going to peel back the layers of the Gita, kind of like an onion. We'll start with this whole idea of multiple meanings. Then we'll hunt for the original text, tackle the language itself, look at the translators, and finally, get into the minds of the philosophical giants who built entire worldviews on these verses.
All right, first things first, we have to get this one core idea straight. The Gita's complexity, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Seriously, its ability to support so many different viewpoints is exactly what has kept it at the center of huge intellectual and spiritual debates for thousands of years.
See, the Gita doesn't just give you a single, neat answer. Instead, it weaves together these different and sometimes competing paths of Indian philosophy. You've got Dharma, the path of duty and right action. You have Jnana, the path of pure knowledge. And you have Bhakti, the path of passionate devotion. Because the text holds all three of these in a kind of perfect tension, it just opens up this massive landscape for interpretation.
Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. The very first challenge is just finding the most authentic version of the text we can. I mean, before we can argue about what the Gita means, we have to agree on what it actually says. And this text has been on quite a journey. It was composed way back, over 2,000 years ago. Then, fast forward to the 8th century, and the brilliant philosopher Shankara comes along and does something huge. He basically standardizes the text. And then, much more recently, a massive academic project gave us the definitive version that scholars use today. And that number, 700, is a really big deal. It wasn't just pulled out of a hat. Shankara knew there were other versions floating around, some with as many as 745 verses. By locking it in at 700, he was basically building a firewall, protecting the core text from any later groups trying to sneak their own ideas in. It was a brilliant move.
So if you want to get really serious about studying the Gita, this is where you start. The Bori Critical Edition. The Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute spent most 50 years, comparing over 1,200 ancient manuscripts from all over, just to piece together the version that is as close as we can possibly get to the original.
Okay, so we've got our critical text. We're good to go, right? Well, not so fast, because now we hit our next layer of complexity, the language itself. This isn't just any old Sanskrit. It's a specific kind scholars call epic Sanskrit, and it has a few curveballs.
And here are the two big ones. First, there's a thing called sande. It's kind of like how we say don't instead of do not. The words just flow together, which can make it tricky to see where one word ends and the next begins. But the real beast is samasa. This is like the word smartphone. You take two words, smart and phone, and smash them together to create a brand new idea. The Gita does this all the time, packing dense philosophy into a single compound word. And unpacking these little philosophical word stacks, well, it's a huge intellectual puzzle. How you decide to split that compound word apart can completely change the meaning of an entire verse. It's one of the biggest reasons why two translations can sound so wildly different.
So we have the right text, and we know about the tricky grammar. We should be on solid ground now, right? Nope, because now we have to deal with the human element. Every single act of translation is also an act of interpretation. Every translator is a guide, and like any guide, they have a particular path they want to show you. And it really boils down to two different goals. On one side, you have what's called philological fidelity. This is the academic approach. The goal is to be as literal as possible, to just give you the raw data and let you figure it out. On the other side is doctrinal fidelity. This is the theological approach, where the goal is to make the translation consistent with a specific philosophy.
Franklin Edgerton is a perfect example of that first school of thought. His method is simple. He gives you a super close, literal translation, and all of his own thoughts and interpretations, he puts those in a totally separate section. He's basically saying, here's the text. My opinions are over there. You do the work.
Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Prabhupada's incredibly famous Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is a masterclass in doctrinal fidelity.
Every single verse is brilliantly and consistently interpreted through the lens of one specific tradition, emphasizing devotion to Krishna above all. Now, neither approach is wrong, they just have totally different aims, and they produce two totally different books.
And that brings us to the very heart of the labyrinth. The biggest reason for all these different Gitas lies with the great commentators, the Acharyas. These weren't just translators. These were geniuses who built entire complex, watertight philosophical systems on top of these 700 verses.
And this table just lays it all out. You have the three giants, Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva. For Shankara, ultimate reality is non-dual. You aren't just part of God, you are God, and you realize this through knowledge. For Ramanuja, you're a part of God, like a spark from a divine fire, and you connect through devotion. And for Madhva, you and God are forever two separate things, and you connect through devotion. I mean, think about it. One text, three completely different ideas about the nature of reality itself.
Now, I know that can sound a little abstract, so let's make it super concrete. Let's look at one famous verse. In chapter 4, Krishna says he comes to earth to protect the good, or in Sanskrit, the sadhunam. Okay, simple enough. But who exactly are the good?
Well, the difference in interpretation is just staggering. For Shankara, who is all about impersonal knowledge, the good are simply moral, ethical people. It's a universal idea. But for Ramanuja, the great champion of personal devotion, the good aren't just anyone. They are specifically the devotees, the people who love and take refuge in God. It's incredible. One word, two completely different worldviews.
So, after all that, after peeling back layers of history, language, translation, and philosophy, where does that leave us? Are we just hopelessly lost in this labyrinth of meaning? Is there any way out? Well, here's the final twist. The contradictions aren't a flaw. They're the whole point. The fact that this one text can support so many deep, coherent, and powerful philosophies isn't a sign of sloppy writing. It's a sign of its absolute genius. This was never meant to be a simple rulebook. I love how Swami Sivananda put it. He suggested that maybe these different views aren't competing errors. Maybe they're just different rungs on a single ladder. Different stages of understanding, each one perfectly suited for a different person at a different point on their spiritual journey. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. What if the goal of reading the Gita was never to find the one true meaning? What if the text is actually designed to be a mirror? A mirror that reflects back our own beliefs, our own temperament, our own stage of life. What if its ultimate question isn't, what do I mean, but who are you?